to this edition of Sapan News of the Southasia Peace Action Network's event, Mohenjodaro and the Indus Valley Civilization, looking to the past to look to the future. We are very excited to discuss Harappa Films' latest film that's just documentary that's recently been released on YouTube and has already had a great response. And we're joined by the filmmaker Omar Khan. And so let's share the trailer. Oops. Give me a second. So we are going to play the trailer. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that was the trailer of the film that I think many of you will have already watched. And if you haven't, it's at harappa.com on the YouTube channel. My name is Sehba Sarwar. I'm a journalist and a peace activist, and I am the co-founder and curator of the Southasia Peace Action Network, also known as SAPAN. And we are absolutely delighted to welcome you all to this event. We try to have these events on a monthly basis. And we are so delighted that Omar, the filmmaker, has joined us and will be in conversation here with us later. I just want to tell you a little bit about Sapan before we begin, which is that, well, first of all, Sapan, as many of you know already, is a multi-generational, intergenerational, regional and diasporic organization, a voluntary body. We started in March 2021. And our aim is to promote peace, collaboration, solidarity, dialogue, and increase spaces for empathy and understanding in the region and in the world. So we have a founding charter that is online at southasiapeace.com. And I will just share that very briefly with you all. That is here. And as you can see, well, these are the three main points of the founding charter: to institute soft borders, ensure human rights and dignity for all, economic cooperation, that's in the first one, and collaboration and cooperation in all areas. And if your name is not already on the list, you can endorse it by clicking on this link, and it's in several languages online. And thanks to the volunteers who did the translations for us. And we have more than 150 organizations that have endorsed the founding charter at this point. We started with 10, and several hundred people who have endorsed it. I'm not going to scroll through the whole thing. You can check it yourself sometime and endorse it if you haven't already. And we also try to meet, as I said, on the last Sunday of most months. And as we start, we honor the visionaries whose work we are taking forward in this. And I will share a slide about them with you, and they will be familiar to many of you. Some of them will at least be familiar to some of you. Um, these are some of the people whose work and legacies we try to take forward, who are no longer with us today. And we, of course, we're missing many in here as well. So we miss them when we go forward, as we go forward. And we are very grateful to all of you for joining us as we try and, do this, to take forward this narrative. So Omar, in that spirit, would you like to say something about Richard Meadow, who recently
Sure.
passed away?
Yes. Sure. Richard Meadow, who just passed away almost 2 weeks ago, was one of the leaders of the Harappa archaeological excavation project. He was on site for like 20 some years. He was a professor at Harvard University, and really one of the two people with Dr. Jonathan Markinoyer who helped found Harappa.com 31 years ago. And he was a great inspiration to so many students and is really an example of one of those tireless people who work behind the scenes but help move a whole field, like archaeology, in this case, Indus archaeology, forward. That's him up there, risking his life taking pictures of, I think this was the granary area at Harappa. So I just wanted to thank Richard for his incredible contributions to the field, and we will miss him.
Thank you so much, Umar, for sharing that. And I'm so glad that I came across him. I'm so glad you wrote about him because we need to honor and take forward, to uplift and let more and more people know about these kind of people. So now, that actually is a really good segue into introducing you, Umar. And again, thank you so much for taking out the time, for being so generous with your resources, and for inviting so many people. And I will. So, for those who don't know Umar, who just introduced us to Richard Meadow, Umar is the founder of Harappa.com, and I think many of you are here today because of him. Umar is he grew up in Vienna, Austria, and in Islamabad. He's a graduate of Dartmouth College, Columbia, and Stanford universities. He has lived in San Francisco for over 30 years, where he recently retired as Chief Technology Officer at Common Sense Media, which he helped to start in 2004. He also collects and researches early photography and ephemera of the subcontinent, as the author of two books, Paper Jewels Postcards from the Raj, which is an absolutely incredibly beautiful, beautiful book, and From Kashmir to Kabul, photographs of John Burke and William Baker, which I have not seen, but the postcards I have, and thank you, Umar, for that wonderful book. So we have Umar with us, who made the film that, as I said, I hope many of you have seen, most of you have seen. And we are so delighted to have Sudeshna Guha with us. She researches on the histories of archaeology, and we do need to remove the duplication of her name on the web post. And researches on the history of archaeology, museums, collecting practices, and heritage making. Her first monograph, Artifacts of History, Archaeology, Historiography, and Indian Pasts, published by Sage in 2015, more than 10 years ago, explores the historiography of the archaeological scholarship of the Indus civilization, that is now republished with an additional with an added preface on the subject by Primus just this year. And her book, History of India Through 75 Objects, provides a glimpse of her long study into issues of materiality and visualizations. And she's curated several exhibitions. And she also teaches at the Department of History and Archaeology at the Shiv Nadar Institute of Eminence in Delhi. And then we will also be joined by artist, activist, and educator Sehba Sarwar, who I will say, this is not nepotism. Sehba is my sister. Some of you know that. Some of you might be wondering. Just in full disclosure, this was not, this is on merit, entirely on merit. Sehba will present her poem on the Mohenjodaro girl, who's also controversially known as the dancing girl. And her work tackles displacement, migration, and women's issues. A second edition of her novel, Black Wings, was published by Valise Books a few years ago. And her essays, short stories, and poems have appeared in several publications. And we grew up in an activist family in Karachi. Sehba has received many, many awards, and she's also an alumnus of Mount Holyoke College, and she is the recently served as the Altadena Co-Poet Laureate in 2024-2026. And her papers are archived at the University of Houston. So welcome to all of you. And thank you again, Omar, Sudeshna, and Sehba for joining us. So I will step off the screen and hand it over to you guys for this. Looking forward to this discussion. Thank you again so much.
Thank you. Okay, Omar, can I kickstart the discussion? Can I just begin with your film on Mohenjo-daro? For somebody who's grown up in India, I'm an Indian, and I have never seen Mohenjo-daro. I think your Harappa.com and the film allowed us access into the Pakistan side. Now, you are a scholar of visual. You are a scholar of photography. You've written a fantastic book on Burke and Baker. That was your first book. And what I wondered when I was seeing the film is the kind of the filmography, you know, the camera you took, how you filmed it, how many sessions did it take to kind of get a sense of Mohenjo-daro? It's a huge site. So what did you decide to keep? What did you decide to eliminate, etc.?
So I went there about a year and a half ago, and I had been visiting after 50 years, and I had gone there in high school, and I had a few pictures, and I wanted to go. I had been to Harappa many times, but I knew that Mohenjo-daro was the most beautiful and incredible site. So I drove up there with my friend Aslam Khwaja from Karachi. It's a long drive. And we basically spent, I think, 3 nights there. And I had an iPhone camera shooting on 4K. Everything was shot on an iPhone camera. I did not use a single professional camera at all at the site. I plan to go back with a much better camera, but it's amazing what you can do with an iPhone, especially at 4K. And I spent 3 days getting up at dawn and shooting through sunset every day. I'm really sorry I did not shoot the site at night, and I'm planning to go back and shoot it at night because it's a whole other mysterious field. But the thing that struck me the most, and I mean, Ramila Tapper says the same thing in the movie, is that when you stand on the Stupa Mound and look over the DKG and the HR and the Vats area, it's like unbelievably huge. It's like you just think this was a huge city. And I think being struck by that and then walking in between the streets and seeing the ruins and the bricks, and I had a little one of these handheld devices so you can walk with the camera and it doesn't bounce too much. I just spent 3 days shooting as much as I possibly could, interviewing people there. I had a lot of pictures of the artifacts, of course, over the years at Harappa.com from Richard and Mark and other archaeologists. So I was able to weave those in. And then access to a lot of archival photographs, which, as you know, I love. And then I work with a designer who works on Harappa.com. So we put many of those into design so we could visually play around with things. But no, it was a fantastic time with the camera there. I really enjoyed it. You might be muted.
Sorry, yeah. So this muting is being a problem here. Okay, so the other question here is because your film has won so many fantastic, I mean, it's got 2 really good awards as a documentary award. And I can see this film being a very, very important part of our teaching because this has also got the critical verve, but it also has that engaging thing with other stories of Mohenjo-daro. For example, what Sheikh Javed tells us about it. So you have known people a little bit about how you got to know them and a little bit about the duration of the film, because I think the editing is fantastic in terms of so what made you think about the duration, that this is what you're going to do?
So my editor, Richard, was, tremendous. I had a very good conversation with a friend of mine who teaches at Columbia, Manan Ahmed Asif. And he told me that in the
Yes.
classroom, you really want to make something that's 30 to 40 minutes. You've got to be short so there's time for discussion. And that people's sort of attention span has really shifted over the years. So you need to make something that really fits what their needs are. So that made me say, hey, it's got to be this many minutes. And originally it was a bit longer and we, kept cutting it back. So yeah, I really had that idea to do something short and that could be used for teaching. So I've worked with Ilona Aronovsky for many years. She did the quiz for the movie. So she's very involved in teaching kids because people start learning about the Indus Valley in this country and also in the subcontinent around 6th, 7th, 8th grade, so middle school. So you want to make something that interests them as well as sort of says something to the older adult who might be interested and even might be interesting for a scholar. So trying to balance all those things was part of our objective here.
I'll come back to you, but I want to now go to Sehba because this is the dancing girl who's behind you, I see in the poster. And Sehba has written a fantastic poem on the dancing girl. And Sehba, what I wanted to ask you is what inspired you to write about her?
She's been part of my life uh, all through growing up. We used to go to Appa in Sadr in Karachi and go look at her, buy her for gifts for everybody. Eventually, Appa closed, but I kept buying whenever I saw it, I would buy it. My daughter has one. I had two replicas. I gave one to my daughter when she went to college. Bina has one in her house. My mother, she's in us. She lives within us, which is the title of my poem. You live within us, and you can't grow up, at least in my family, maybe there are people who are different, but in our community, we could not be in Karachi in Pakistan without knowing about the dancing girl and knowing and being familiar with the sculpture and the size, and the replicas are almost always, I've never seen replicas larger than 4.5 inches. It's a reproduction.
So considering that we have the dancing girl in India and she's a small, tiny figure, she literally fits into the palm of your hand. We grew up with the, yes, I don't have it. So we grew up with the priest king, which is what we don't have. But it'll be great if you can read your poem out to all of us so that,
Absolutely.
Yeah, we
And
know
I
what
just, yeah, and I just want to say that in my altar, in my home, she sits by my doorway, enter and out. So when I come in, turn on the light, whatever I do, she's right by the door. So I see her and I engage with her. I talk to her every day, all the time. You live within us, Mohenjo-daro's girl, 4 inches tall. Oh, I should project it. Let me do that so people can follow.
That would be great.
I'll start over. You live within us, Mohenjo-daro's girl, 4 inches tall. You tell the truth of women's strength and resistance. Body bare with attitude, hand on hip, lips curled, one arm wrapped in bangles, beads between breasts, your triangle and slit, reminding us of who we are. You stand 4,500 years old. They say you are 15 and call you the dancing girl. Perhaps you were, but you could have fought kingdoms and walked with women to carve their paths to freedom by the 5-armed river that waters our land. Or perhaps each day you danced for yourself inside the mound or on the streets and sprinkled daily joy on those you touched. Today, lodged in Delhi, far from your home by the Indus River, you reside amidst us. Through bronze and wax replicas, often body parts erased, on college student bookshelves, on altars, coffee tables, and kitchen windows. Across continents, you connect us and inspire us to rebel and move to the rhythm of our own heartbeats. Thank you.
Super. Okay, so she's not the, she's the dancing girl. She's not the dancing girl. There has been so many, there have been meanings for it. Somebody has written she may have been the warrior. Omar, I want to get back to you in terms of thinking through this object. How much, this is something I don't know. How much of the Indus civilization is actually taught in schools? What is there in the textbooks in Pakistan? Because the Indian textbooks have a different take on the Indus.
Yeah, maybe Bina or Sehba can speak better, closer to that, since I did not go through the Pakistani school system. But it is taught, and it is part of Pakistan's cultural heritage, like the poem just showed. I think the great thing about her is that she's such an impudent character, and you can imagine her standing in front of the priest king and saying, "Hey, what's up, buddy?" She's not going to be cowed by anyone, which I think makes her such a resonant figure for us today as well. But of course, whether she was a dancing girl, I think she was a dancer, but exactly we don't know. It's still controversial. And
Mm.
like so much about this civilization, we don't even know who the priest king was.
Yeah.
We
If
don't
at
even
all.
know if he was a priest king. We've attached that name to him like we've attached
Mm.
a name to her, not knowing. So, our imaginations and desires fill in so much about these objects and who they are, which, it's not accurate in a certain way, but it also gives them resonance for modern times. So one doesn't want to totally discount that. One just wants to be aware of the fact that we're reading our own sort of imaginations into these things at the same time.
So Sehba is a writer and an artist who kind of looks at collections and objects. What do you think of history? I mean, how do you approach history? What do you think history does? What do you think these objects do to your craft, to your
Mm.
I think the word would be intersection between art and history, intersection between writing fiction, poems, and writing history.
Great question. In my first draft of my novel Black Wings, by that point I had lived in the United States for a long time. It's a story about mother-daughter conflict, and it goes back and forth between Houston and Karachi. And my father read it, and he was a student activist in the 50s. He spent time in prison. He read it and he was like, it's missing. It's really missing history. And so I had to go back and add that. And now today, I mean, that was like very long time ago. That was like pre 9/11. I just cannot imagine writing without reference to history in my work. Everything is, because history is also very subjective. What is told, what is erased. Just like the Mohenjodaro girl, I really don't even feel comfortable calling her the dancing girl anymore, because I feel like she is from Mohenjodaro. As Omar said, we project our imagination and we put on and what we think and what Sir Mortimer Wheeler said, and we just go, and I just feel like it's, for me, it's really important to redefine it. And I'm fascinated by subaltern histories and how it's in the histories that don't get told and all of the stories that are hidden and buried. I mean, it's happening very actively in India. It's happening in Pakistan. What is the history we're told? And what is the history that's left out? So as artists, we have to tell the story from our perspective. We have to tell the story as we know it. We have to talk to the community. We have to stay plugged in. And for years, I ran a social justice nonprofit arts organization, Voices Breaking Boundaries, and we were doing work specifically on issues in the community. So, and I'm reading actually right now Viet Thanh Nguyen. He's a wonderful Pulitzer Prize winning author, and he's talking about authors in the essay I'm reading right now. He's talking about authors in the majority and the minority, and how authors in the majority have the privilege of overlooking history, and because it doesn't impact their lives. It's just like we're talking about, just the traffic stop, how we don't like the light in that corner. But authors from the minority will be examining why traffic stops and why railroad signs are in a particular neighborhood, why certain neighborhoods get freeways cut through them and others don't. So it's very much about the consciousness of how history, current events, all of it impacts us. And that is
I also like
very
to
much.
imagine I also like to imagine how many more dancers are buried in Mohenjo-daro, given that we've only
Yes,
excavated less than 10% of the site, right? So
I
there are
know.
probably many more lying there, waiting for us to find them.
Indeed, but you know what Seba said right now, Omar, is also there in your film, because Javed, for example, and the other person, Ghulam Sheikh, I mean, they all tell you stories about the place. So there's such beautiful stories about the king who gets in there and then gets thrown out, the bricks which come in there. So I think, and I mean, I'm a historian, so for a long time we never actually considered, writings on history was like, yeah, okay, fine, that's not real history. But I think we are all kind of taking writers into consideration, because after all, histories are established. There's nothing which is out there. But I think your film in Mohenjodaro actually also does a really, really good, well, if I use the word job, it's a very trite thing to use, but the packaging of history, archaeology, or the archaeological scholarship, and the recollection of a site which has happened over the, say, past century by people, and they have myths which has come up with it. And this will add to the archaeological value of the site, because this will also add to the heritage making of that site, which gets me to just ask you probably the last question would be, Pakistani scholarship on the Indus has been a lot, and they have been really, really good, and we get to know about it very little on the Indian side or in many other places because some other scholarship comes in. So can you just talk a bit about this? The scholarship.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there is this myth that, Indus scholarship stopped at partition and everything was done by John Marshall and Wheeler and all. That is totally false. Actually, right after independence in 47, most of the Archaeological Survey of India archaeologists and all went to India. So did the archives and many objects like the dancing girl. But in Pakistan, a lot was done. I mean, in the mid 50s, F.A. Khan excavated Kotiji, which is a city right near a town, let's say a village near Mohenjodaro, and just opened up the whole field of the early Harappan period. And that actually stretches all the way up to what is now Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Rahman Deri, which was excavated in the 70s. So we see a big civilization, early Harappan, early Indus Valley civilization flourishing in the area, even before Mohenjo-daro. And in fact, the latest excavations at Mohenjo-daro have shown that Kotiji period wall was built in Mohenjo-daro, like around 2800 BCE, if not earlier. So there's an incredible story. And then it was, Dr. Rafiq Mughal who excavated all the sites on the Ghaggar-Hakra River, discovered another huge city, Ganverdiwala, which has not been excavated basically at all. There are, in fact, other large cities, Indus cities in Pakistan, which have been discovered recently. And there's been some great work done in India as well. Two big cities, Raki Gari and Dholavira, excavated. So there's been a lot of work done by archaeologists in India and Pakistan, as well as foreign teams that have come. I mean, the excavations at Harappa with, Richard and Mark and the Harappa Archaeological Research Project, that is the most detailed and longest excavation of an Indus site anywhere in the world. And the real stratigraphy, the whole sense of the periods of the different phases of the Indus civilization, all were done because of the work at Harappa. So a lot has been happening. I wish there was a lot more. I wish we would excavate all these cities and put a lot more resources into this. There's a lot more that Pakistan can do as well as India, but a lot has been done, and I think we're slowly peeling away at the importance of this civilization.
Yes, I mean, the entire early Harappan period was actually done through the Pakistani scholarship because of Kotiji, Rahman Deri, and all those sites, Al-Hadino, which was also, a fantastic excavation which happened there. And Dholavira has told you about a different kind of a Indus which can exist with these big a tablet with huge scripts, etc. And okay, so Sehba, is this the only poem you've written about the dance? I mean, is this the only poem you've written on an Indus artifact? And have you been revising the dancing girl with what has been happening with her in terms of showing or not showing body parts? Because, in Indian schools, textbooks, this had happened. So I just was curious, about this.
Yeah, this is the only poem I've written about the girl. And or Mohenjo-daro artifacts. I have a section in my novel that goes into Mohenjo-daro. But in terms of revision, Omar is the instigator. I thought I was done with the poem about 2 weeks ago because I had given a reading in Boston and Bina shared the poem with Omar and he said he wanted to publish it on harappa.com. He sent it to me. I sent it to him and then he saw my image and he said, because the poem right now has Omar's image, which is taken from the Delhi Museum. And this is the replica that I purchased in Pakistan, in Karachi. And I saw his image and I just was, if you compare, I've seen the original, obviously. I've seen the original replicas of the original online, Wikipedia, everywhere. To write a poem about something, you have to do some research. So obviously I'd done research, I'd read about it. I had the object, the image, and I was moved, and I'm always moved by her. But significantly, once I compared the two, which I'd never done before, once I compared the original with my replica, I noticed, and now I always ask people, can you see the difference? And some people do, some people don't. But for the one from Karachi,
yeah,
her pubic area is completely erased. There's just one hollow line, whereas the original, I'll project it on the screen again, and maybe people will see it. You can see the difference. So after Omar sent me that, I didn't even tell him why. Did you? I'm sure, Omar, you may have figured out why I wanted to revise it, because I couldn't talk about the sculpture. It's not about her sexuality, but to ignore, as has been ignored by Pakistani, the Pakistani. I don't know. I mean, I can make a general statement by the government, but I think it's just the society, like, oh, we can't go there. It's not an area of a woman's body that we should touch, and it should not be visible. And it's obviously happening in India, although they lost that case. But I think, and I was writing the poem before what was happening in India. The first draft I wrote last year. So I just feel like this is part of that erasure of history. This is a very physical manifestation of what happens when history is erased. And I just think about the time when women's bodies were not sexualized, glorified, were not seen as risky or whatever, belonging to just partner. You know, it's just what was the Mohenjodaro, what was the Harappa civilization like when a woman could just be a woman and not worry about how she was seen, what it was going to do to others. And she could just, because there's nothing shameful about a woman's body. That's half the population of the world. Why are we so afraid? She's 4 inches tall, 4.5 inches. She's tiny. And she has so much power. Why hide it? So that was the revision. Omar, did you want to say anything about that?
I just want to add to that, the poster behind me, which is from the early 60s from Pakistan. She's turned away from you. Her front is not visible, just to sort of, echo. But I do hope that at some point Sehba writes a poem about the priest king, because I think he is also deserving of some kind of, modern day sort of response. And maybe not, but it's, somebody should take him on too.
I think he should be, because these are the two iconic figures, despite the many other, the masterpieces. I mean, I can go on and on about when they were first exhibited, first in India, in New Delhi, in the Inter-Asiatic Conference in 1947, just before partition. And then they went to London. They became the masterpieces. So there are 10 things of the Indus which became masterpieces. And then there was a tug of war about what the two countries were going to keep. But the dancing girl, even when Mortimer Wheeler when he was the Bronze Age expert in a way that he had actually studied the Roman period before he came and became the Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India. So he had really seen some very beautiful Roman bronzes. But John Marshall, Wheeler, all of them also imputed in her a certain tribal identity. And so there, within that tribal identity, it was okay to be a nude. But then when they started putting other identities on it, then that nudity became a problem, I think. And for India, it is obviously, I mean, she was the mascot for the G20, but she was all dressed up in a sari. And what has become one of the features of her is not the nudity any longer, but the bangles she wears in her arms. She has 25 bangles on one arm and just 2 on the other. And the idea is that, Indian women wear bangles like this. Kutchi women wear bangles like this. So these objects out of their archaeological scholarship, and that's what's so exciting about your poem, Sehba, that they lend to imagination about who we were and heritage and what it is we come from. What of the past we look at? And it comes up with this thing about looking back to look into the future. And I just want to ask you, Omar, and I'll just stop there, is how much of the site of Mohenjo-daro, you say that you went there when you were a kid in 1972, and I use the word kid because, I mean, that wow factor, which is there when we see an archaeological site. I mean, I still remember Ramila Thapa telling me when she was 5 years old, she had been taken to see Takht-e-Bahi, and she still remembers that site, the child's eye of wow, what it was. And we have some of this. How much of it has changed in terms of Mohenjo-daro? What has not changed?
Much of there have been no real major new excavation areas at Mohenjo-daro. If anything, the site has deteriorated a little bit since the 70s. And many of the bricks you see are new bricks put up or bricks put up afterwards. Because the problem, I mean, so less than 10% of the site is excavated. The problem today with excavations is we want to do things properly. And in the olden days, they just dug through layers and didn't restore or keep the layers that they destroyed. So that archaeological excavation was a very destructive process. We don't want to do that anymore. So when they dig something up at Harappa, they'll close it up in sand again when they leave. And they would have to do the same thing at Mohenjo-daro today. So future excavations are going to be very expensive to do properly. But we want them to do it properly because so much information is lost when you destroy, the levels of the site. But yeah, I mean, look, a few little excavations have gone on last year and, in fact, earlier this year at Mohenjo-daro. Dr. Mark Kenoyer and the Sindhi Archaeological Authority are excavating, trying to find the walls, trying to dig as deep as possible. We don't even know how deep Mohenjo-daro goes. It probably goes to 3000 BC, if not earlier. I mean, Harappa goes to at least 3500 BC. We don't know. We've not hit the bottom layers at Mohenjo-daro because they're waterlogged. So, but we could get below them with the right equipment. So there's a lot of hope still that we can find out a lot of great information about Mohenjo-daro in the years to come, provided that the resources are made available. And I do feel that the Sindh government and the Punjab government, now that archaeology is a provincial subject in Pakistan, are showing the interest and putting the resources behind some of this work. So I'm actually very hopeful about the future. Tons to do, but we're beginning to get there.
Great. Because, I mean, the other thing for this, my other question, the reason for this is also Mohenjo-daro is one of the first sites to have a UNESCO tag. In 1966, Mortimer Wheeler tried it. So the UNESCO tag also actually creates problems, or it facilitates the archaeological scholarship of a site. So I speak as an academic here. I mean, my interest here is to kind of figure out, since Mohenjo-daro has been a UNESCO site for so long, what stopped it? I mean, I do know of Janssen's work, etc. So
I mean, there's a lot more work to be done, and UNESCO site does create certain barriers. I mean, for example, the airport at Mohenjo-daro is built over the site. So
there's
actually, we should, absolutely, we should remove the airport and start digging beneath the airport. So, I mean, the rest house is on part of the site, and at Harappa, it's similar. So it's like these sites are so much bigger than we initially thought. And I think that's part of what is so intriguing about this civilization. Like, how did you put together such large cities? I mean, I can imagine 1 lakh or 2 lakhs of people living here at some point, which would have made it the biggest Bronze Age city by far anywhere in the world. So we're just beginning to even understand the extent of these cities and how much has been destroyed and eroded over time as well. So we're lucky even to have what we have of Mohenjo-daro today.
So I'll just stop now, but I just hope that you keep on making films about the various sites. And also then I love the way you ended it with Queen Puabi's tomb, because it's also you connect it with the bronze world. And Sehba, you keep on writing about these objects, and because that's the only way that they can also be placed in the public domain and, fire the imagination of people to think of this incredible Bronze Age, which was there in South Asia, and how it connected with the Bronze Age world. And I will end with the note just saying that John Marshall, for whatever he's reviled, I mean, he remains my favorite archaeologist in the way that he actually got the chronology correct and he got the connection correct. And he, in his own times, tried to connect it with Crete, connect it with what was known of the Bronze Age. But Marshall's scholarship, to a large extent, is, on Mohenjo-daro, and the first edited volume with that, the little seal which he got made for a plaque to give his team in 1927. There are many different stories about this. So, Sehba, we just hope that there'll be more poems coming out of that.
Thank you.
So maybe we can ask people to
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, all of you. That was really wonderful to hear that discussion and to see, to hear those very rich points being made. And Omar, I'm blown away by the what you said, that the airport is built on top of the site. What? That's so crazy. How much damage would that have already done? But I know there's people who would like to ask questions, but I would like to call upon some people who I know are here, and I would like to give them a chance first before we open it up. So I saw Shima Kirmani join. Shima, are you here? If you are, please turn on your camera and say something so we can bring you on, because Shima Kirmani, as many of you know, is a leading dancer in Pakistan, and one of her pieces, one of her dance pieces, the choreography begins with that pose of the so-called dancing girl that was was initiated by her guru, Mr. Ghansham, where I also took dance classes when we were little. So Shima, are you there?
Yes.
And also I saw Salima. Oh, there you are. Wonderful. And also I saw Salima Hashmi, Namrata Sharma, and Khushi Kabir. So I'm going to ask them also to come on briefly. So Shima, would you like to say something? I know you came in a little late, and I know you've been so busy, you've been doing so much, and so grateful to you for taking out time. For those of you who don't know, Shima Kirmani, as I mentioned, is one of Pakistan's leading not just a dancer, she's a feminist activist, she's a mentor, she's mentored, I don't know, hundreds of people, and I was so delighted to see the World Dance Festival show you put on in Karachi, Shima, that your students were there, and it just says so much about to you. And I know you get embarrassed with praise, so I'm going to stop. But yeah, please, would you share your thoughts? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Veena. And I just want to share that my interest in Mohenjodaro and the whole Indus Valley Civilization is linked with my search for my own cultural identity as somebody whose family migrated from India into Pakistan. And so I have always searched for how I can relate myself to this land, to this region, to the people, and to the culture that existed in this area. And especially when I started, when I went to India to learn dance, classical dance, and I actually came back after having studied Odissi for 3 years. And a lot of my friends said to me that, oh, what is this? This is nothing to do with us, nothing to do with Pakistan, nothing to do with Pakistani culture, etc., etc. And so I started doing a lot of research on that, and actually made several trips to Mohenjo-daro. And I was lucky that at that time, a person who was the person who had set up the Sindh Museum in Mohenjo-daro and was in charge of all the artifacts that were collected at the Sindh Museum. He took me behind the scene, so to say, all the artifacts that were lying in the warehouses as well, and which have never been displayed in Pakistan. And I saw so many relief works, seals, broken parts of statues, where I found these figures in dancing postures. And, that is what I was concerned about. That was my interest, to see how it did exist in this land, in this region, always. And of course, all the other seals where you see a figure in the yoga posture, where you see figures around where rituals are taking place, etc. And so I was convinced. And then, of course, there are masks. There are theater masks that were discovered. So there are many pieces that I saw, which he told me very clearly that the state does not want these to be exhibited or put out there. So they've been kept in the storerooms, in the warehouses since God knows when, since 47. And whatever has been found later, whenever. And so I actually created a whole huge 2-hour choreographed kind of a ballet, because I could see I know that there's now a huge debate about to even call that statue the dancing figure, but the people of Sindh claim it as a dancing girl, and they claim that posture, and I found it so close to the Tribangi posture of the Odissi dance, which I practice. And so sorry, I don't know where that's coming from, but anyway.
Somebody needs to be muted. Everybody, please, would you mute yourselves?
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, Shima, carry on.
So I created a 2-hour dance drama, and this was in 1992, a time where dance was actually banned, still banned, because it was the ban came in 1983 when Ziaul Haq brought these Islamic laws in Pakistan, and so the story that I created from there, which obviously taken from various influences of literature, where people have talked about statues coming alive, because then you see, especially in Odissi dance, if anybody knows the form, there is a lot of freeze, movements that go into freeze. And so I created this whole story which is contemporary as well as going back into history, of a young girl who's learning dance in Pakistan, and her boyfriend comes and says that, oh, but I told you that you must not do this, and I'm going to break the engagement, etc., etc. And then he breaks the engagement, but he's dancing in fury and rage and anger, and his friend comes and says, let's go away for a while. And so they go down the river Indus. And as they go down the river Indus, as they travel around they reach Mohenjodaro, and where he sees all these statues. And mind you, there are many statues of women. So it's not only what I just heard somebody say about the priest king. There are very many statues of women, which are claimed as goddesses, mother goddess figure, etc., and others, and they're in different shapes and sizes, wearing different kinds of headdresses, wearing different kinds of jewelry, and there are more statues of women than men, actually. And so when this boy reaches Mohenjo-daro, and he sees the dancing girl there, and so in Sindh we call her Simbara. That is the name given here to that statue, and he sees his girlfriend in that image, and he follows her. And as he follows her, I show the whole life of whatever I discovered and researched about the life of people in Mohenjo-daro, which to me was about relating how what are the origins of dance in collective labor, in collective rhythm, in collective movement, etc. And also, we must remember that from all the artifacts found, there is hardly any weapons that have been found. So it was apparently a very peaceful society where dance and music, because you do have a relief where there's bansuri, you do have a relief where there's the drum player and the drum in his hands and things like that. And so all these characters come alive, and this boy lives a life with them, and then he wants to take this girl back with him. And that's when this is fanciful in imagination, that I say that when people started fighting amongst themselves, because one group said, and there's this myth about Mohenjo-daro also, which is related in some of the Sindhi books that I've read, that that they took such care of their artists, they wouldn't, whenever they had to move anywhere from one area to another area, the people of the Indus Valley Civilization, they were very careful to protect their artists. So in my story, when the boy says to the girl, come with me, and she's almost willing to go, but that's when the people start fighting. That one group says let her go, and one group says no, she must stay with us because she's part of us. And then when that violence enters into the population, that's when the flood comes. So this is how I have symbolically treated the whole thing. And so when the guy comes back home from this fanciful journey, he's a transformed being, and he's understood the importance of art and culture and dance and music. And then he sort of realizes that he made a mistake by, saying to his fiancée that you must not dance, and so he begs forgiveness and etc. So that was the story, and it became so. I mean, here for Pakistan, it was so welcomed. Not from the state or the government, because when I looked for support from the government, they said, no, we don't claim any of this ideas that that this figure is in the dancing posture, and that this scene is this man is sitting in a yoga posture, whatever. At that time, they did not want to acknowledge all of that. Things have changed now. Now, because it's become such an international affair that and they feel that they have to start owning this culture. So this is what I wanted to share, and this is
Thank
performed all
you.
over Pakistan over many years. I've traveled with it, and of course, I mean, when I was in Delhi, I've seen the original statue and what it looks like, and and I feel that it's very important for Pakistan to actually claim this as a civilization where dance and music flourished.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Shima, for taking time out to join us.
Respect for women, because
yes.
yeah.
So those are definitely values we need to claim. And like I mentioned, Southasia Peace Action Network, we are not just India-Pakistan, but it's a regional organization, and we have people in all around the region as well as in the diaspora. And I see two of our wonderful founding members and core members with us here, Namrata Sharma in Kathmandu and Khushi Kabir in Dhaka. And I also see Salima Hashmi and Lalita Ramdas, and I'd love to have all of you say a few words. So Namrata or Khushi, would one of you like to start? Namrata, why don't you, because I know you probably have to also get going, because Namrata has a new grandson and she's got granny duties as well. So
thank you, Beena. I mean, this has been really amazing listening to the speakers. I also went through the documentary, and actually, I don't have much to contribute to the Mohenjo-daro, the whole Indus Valley civilization, frankly speaking. But I just wanted to share. Last year, I went with a group of my friends. I joined I have very dear friends in Gujarat, and there was always plans for them to take me to Kutch. So when we went to Kutch, we visited Dholavira. So when I was watching the documentary, actually, it reminded me, because the structure is shown over there, Mohenjo-daro, we had seen in Dholavira. And like, for me, when I was listening to the speakers just now and watching the documentary, like, the thoughts that pass through my mind always is, like, when we were in Kutch also, I could stand at a point and see Pakistan across the street, yeah, across the waters, And then I was talking with my friends, what fun it would be to just cross over, They were saying the same. The birds were crossing over, but we were stuck. And whenever I am with Pakistani friends, with Indian friends, I've never heard anything, you know, unpleasant about each other, So I just feel that as Sapan, I mean, when we do all these activities, that's what we always talk about, Bina and Kushi, don't we? And that, how do we bridge this gap? That the civilization crosses over the bridges, and then countries like Nepal, where things may not be as evident as in India and Pakistan, but the minds are the same, you know. So when I was listening to all the speakers just now, and by the way, I wanted to share with you, two of my friends who took me to Dholavira are actually here today
Oh,
listening to
nice.
us. So if
Nice.
Sejal and
Welcome.
Titiksha could later on get a time to speak, you know,
Yeah.
they are wonderful. They are great
Thank you.
activists from
Thank
India,
you,
and
Namrata.
it will
Thank
be
you, Namrata.
wonderful.
And I want to
Thank
just
you
I
so
want to
much.
just add that Namrata is a very senior and respected journalist in Nepal. And we actually published, and one of the reasons I particularly thought of asking Namrata, because of I know her affinity to these to the historical things, but also because she wrote a piece. She was part of a piece. She was part of a team that reported on this New York Met catalog that linked to the alleged looting and trafficking figures. That an article that she'd written that we published in Sapan News about. And then also I wanted to share, Shima, when she was speaking, I wanted to just share this thing, that this is the opening thing from Shima's choreography from the piece about the dancing, about Mohenjo-daro, the story that she told.
Yeah.
So thank
Thank
you
you,
so much,
Bina.
Namrata.
Just also
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
touch on
sure.
Shiva's. I was really impressed with her, you know, analysis and her take on the girl of Mohenjo-daro, you know.
Yeah,
So these
yeah.
are wonderful things that when I was also, thank you, Bina, for sharing that piece, because when I was trying to go and dig in and find stories behind lost statues and artifacts, lot of questions, lot of values attached with people, with these deities and idols come out, you know, and that's also reflected in that story. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Namrata. Thank you for joining us at this late hour in Kathmandu. And from Dhaka, which is even later, 15 minutes later than Kathmandu, we have Khushi Kabir. And Khushi Kabir is a leading feminist activist. And, Umar, you probably know also, I think you might already know Khushi already. If not, you should. And of course, anyway, Khushi, please, if you'd like to share a few words from Dhaka, we'd love to know your thoughts.
Thank you. It's been amazing. I was very interested. I wanted to watch it. I saw the film. I watched the film before. I watched it twice. Once when Bina sent it to me, and now again just before I got on to this Sapan session. And I just say that in many ways, this is so perfect for us as South Asians. I went to school, I grew up in Karachi. So as a child in the 50s, I remember going to Mohenjodaro. And when Omar says there's an airport over there now, I remember we had a really long journey where we had to stay overnight in a place, I think called Nawabshah or something.
Arcana.
Yeah, I just remember the name Nawabshah, and I remember the night and all that. But what occurs when I go to any of these sites is I keep thinking of what were the lives like then. So I think this is something that happens to most people who go to any of these historical sites, of what life was with people who lived there, walked there. Exactly, I think I still remember bits. I remember bits of the Great Bath. I remember the streets, and I just remember thinking that here are people walked so many thousands, 5,000 years ago. Anyway, this was wonderful. And Sehba, your poem was just amazing. I think the whole thing was brought together so well. I think Sudeshna's, the way she questioned, she brought out facts was impressive. So while I was watching and hearing you all, I was thinking of, I went to college, I studied art in the 60s. And while we studied history of civilization and history of art, they were very keen in teaching us and showing us about Mesopotamia, about Egypt. Our history teacher was totally, he was so in thing with Akhenaten, so a lot of that. But just fleetingly about the Indus situation. And I think, to me, Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, does not signify India and Pakistan or because I'm in Bengal. It signifies the common history that we share. The common history that is shared and which we all of us need to know. I think even Namrata in Nepal needs to know that this region shares this. This is the history of our region, which is so vast and so rich, and what we really don't know. It's a shame that we don't have the kinds of funds to be able to do the excavation that's needed. And that's the same in Bangladesh. We have a 6th century before Christ, for whatever way we would like to call it, monastery and archaeological site. But because of lack of money, you just dig a little and know that the bricks have gone down till this century. But there's nothing more. You go to the site, it's just nothing there. And I think it's really important that the money that is spent in wars and in money that is spent in all the wrong things, this is very important that we need to know our past, to know where we are, what we are, and to forge our future together as a region. And to me, this whole session today has been so important, and it's been quite engaging. It's been very engaging. I just want to say that I wish I'd love to once go back again and see it now as an adult. Maybe someday I will have the chance, who knows, I never know. But I haven't seen Harappa. I would like to see that too. I'd like to, but I think it's so important, and I don't know, maybe we need to start talking in Sapan about history as it should be taught in South Asia.
Yeah, we could do
the politics, we talk about peace, we talk about rights, having the same human rights.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add one bit, when you mentioned Ghanasham, and I liked Sehba's description of what she was doing.
Yes.
I learned dancing from Ghanasham and his wife Nilima Ghanasham in the 50s also. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. and Mrs. Ghansham. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. I didn't know. And that must have been when they were in their PCHS house. Because I went to them when they were in their defense house. That's when we used to go when we were teenagers. We went there and anyway.
Music director called Devu Bhattacharya. He was.
Yes. I just wanted to add one thing, because you said something about Harappa and Mohenjo-daro and you're sitting in Dhaka. When Harappa was excavated, they used the epithet in Chandraketugarh, Bengal. So that's the Harappa of Bengal. Okay. So in also Paharpur, anything which is a very big, yes. I mean, I know what you
was the other area I was talking about. That.
So these are called the Harappa of Bengal. So the point is that the Bronze Age has become, and this was actually used in the Ashutosh Museum's records. So the Bronze Age has always caught the imagination of everybody in South Asia.
And also in South India, as Omar.
Of course, Omar can tell you more about it.
If I can add one thing, the number one, the most traffic to Harappa.com comes from Kolkata.
Really?
And it's always
That's right. I remember you mentioned
for a long time. Yes, so just for a long time it's been that way. So it's absolutely a sort of universal South Asian and even beyond interest.
Absolutely.
That's a really wonderful point, Omar. And actually, Khushi, you took the word. And when you talked about the South Asian, I was actually going to ask. I wanted to ask you about that, but you actually mentioned that without my asking you. So thank you for that. And Omar, it was Haris Gazdar who pointed out that how this topic is so South Asian, because I hadn't thought of it in that way. And I thought I saw Haris here as well, if he's here. But in the interest of
I just wanted to say hi to Khushi, because she's been Khushi, I didn't know we did Ghansham also. Khushi has worked with me on another project I did prior to all of this work called Borderlines. Khushi has always been interested in collapsing the border in South Asia. So I'm just happy to see you.
I love Sapan anyway.
Yeah.
Yes. And I love staying at your house.
So yeah, thank you so much. And we thought we'd end by 12, so this is just a little over 12 now. But I do, and I know I see some hands up. I see Ramesh Advani, who is here in Boston and wants to go to Pakistan. But like I mentioned before, Salima Hashmi is here, and I want to give Lalita Ramdas in India also a chance. So Salima. Yes, because I know it's late for you. It is way past your bedtime as well.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Very, very briefly, I think I put it in the chat that the only poem, English poem that Faiz Ahmad Faiz wrote was called The Unicorn and the Dancing Girl.
Oh.
And it is about the timelessness of Mohenjo-daro. And while I was listening to everybody, I had this sense of what else is said in that poem, and that is time past is time present.
Yeah.
And I think that we are so privileged to be in the continuum of that time. We are now just part of that time that once was, but is now with us. Thank
Is
you.
now with us. Thank you so much. And for those who don't know Salima Hashmi, I'm assuming most people here would know Salima Hashmi, but for those who don't, she's an artist and educator. She's one of our founding members as well at SAPAN, and she's also, and that is not her only claim to fame, but she also happens to be the elder daughter of Faiz Ahmad Faiz, the revered poet, who comes up in every SAPAN discussion, Chimikhala, pretty much, almost, anyway. And she's joining us. It's very late at night for her, and so thank you so much. And then I would like to call upon our dearest Lalita Ramdas in Delhi. No, in Alibag. Sorry, Lali, you're in Alibag. I'm putting you on the screen with Salima. I'm not removing the spotlight from Salima Hashmi. Lali, could you just lift your thing a little so we can see your chin is getting cut off. So Lalita Ramdas is yeah, wonderful. Lalita Ramdas, for those who don't know her, is an activist, feminist. She also sings beautifully, and she's one of our inspirations. She's also a SAPAN founding member, and her late husband, Admiral Ramu Ramdas, was also one of our founding members, and we miss him. And he's in the second slide, which I did not show. We didn't, because there's so many people who've passed on in the last 5 years since we started SAPAN. So Lolly, over to you. And I know you've been putting some lovely messages in the chat as well, but please share your thoughts.
I'm just so overwhelmed. I really don't know what to say. This has been, I think, one of the most moving sessions that we've had in SAPAN. I watched the film, and I just first of all want to say to Omar that it has been a superb, really outstanding, film that you have made. I wish that we could take it to, well, every school and college, and have young people react and get their kind of understanding. Because one of the things, and that's the only thing I thought I'll just speak about a little, I've been also involved now since 1994, when the Pakistan India People's Forum was first formed. And for about 10 years, what we did quite effectively was to have youth coming together, Indians and Pakistanis, in different places, and discussing things, coming together, comparing textbooks, talking about history. And one of the sessions that we had when they came to the United World College outside Pune was actually a fantastic exposure to Ajanta Ellora, and through a professor at the history department in Pune University, about the entire Indus Valley Civilization. And it was remarkable that young people on both sides of the border actually know so little about this shared heritage that should be, keeping us together rather than continuously dividing us. So I want to say two things. I think that from SAPAN, we really need to now make a much stronger effort. We are doing some things, but not strongly enough. We are living right now in an India where there's much euphoria about what the young people, the cockroaches, have actually been able to achieve. We've got to see where it goes next. But I think they've broken a certain barrier, which is very important. I'm also working with doyens of peace, where we're bringing young students together. And I've just recorded something with two of our young participants. We'll send it out later. But they're all talking about the kind of vision, the kind of new imagination that is required. And as part of that, Beena, let's organize, while I'm still able to travel, a joint a trip to some of these sites about which all of us have been talking about. We'll get those visas somehow or the other. So really, thank you very, very much. It's been exciting. And being part of SAPAN, those of you who haven't joined, please do, because I think it's terribly important to grow these numbers and get many more people, to understand how important that is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lolly. And I want to thank our volunteer, Sara Arshad, who has been diligently sharing links in the chat. And Sara, if you could also share some of those links on the YouTube, that would be amazing. Sara's in Lahore, and she's a teacher and a writer and very committed to our cause as well. So I saw Ramesh Advani has been sitting very patiently with his hand up for a very long time. So I'm going to ask him to, and then we'll maybe, if there's other questions, Umar, Sudeshna, Sehba, if you see questions in the chat that you want to respond to, please, feel free. But Ramesh ji, please would you go ahead and ask your question? And,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Beena. First of all, I have to say thank you to all of the people who've spoken and run this thing. And I think in the twilight of my life and Rita's life, we're so fortunate to have made our acquaintance and friendship with Beena and SAPAN, and we are members of SAPAN. And I just absolutely love, I've lived now longer here than I have lived in India or where my ancestors came from. And I do have a question for Omar or Sudeshna, but before I say that, I just want to make myself a real human in your eyes. My family is a Sindhi Hindu family that emigrated to Mumbai, and my wife's family is also like that, but she went to Delhi. We were born after independence, and now that I am not a scholar or a journalist or an artist, but I've admired all of you from as close as I can possibly get. My life has been in technology and business, and since retiring, I have seen the wonderful histories and places in Egypt and Peru, and I've hankered to see the Indus Valley Civilization, and I'm hoping Beena is very confident we'll be able to get a tourist visa to go to Sindh. My question is, and I do hope I get to meet all of you in person. Sehba, I'm sorry we were out of town when you were here. Beena told us about it, but we were not here. I would love to meet you someday, if not here on the West Coast. My question is somewhat a little techie, but I don't know. I'd like to hear either Omar or Sudeshna's thoughts on the theories of what climate change may have happened that caused the civilization possibly, to go to wither away. And also, there's the story of the Saraswati River, like the Indus River, through that region, and the creation of the salt marshes in Kutch. Do you have any thoughts on that? What may have caused that ecological damage? And it's so worrying because South Asia is definitely staring at potential more ecological damage in the whole region.
So let me take climate change, and Sudeshna, you can take Saraswati. How about that? So,
all right.
Let's say, so, there was a major climate change event around 2000 BCE that affected civilizations across the world. But I think most scholars today do not think that was the sole cause of the decline of the Indus civilization. The Indus people were incredibly resilient at using water in different situations, in farming different crops. I mean, the Cambridge work in India over the last decade or two has shown that under Cameron Petrie. I mean, it's really clear that those people were adaptable And even as rainfall may have gone down, they were able to build reservoirs like in Dholavira and do other things. But clearly, it had some impact on them. And in those days when you had small cities and so forth, they were also fragile. So that could have led to a cascade of other issues, intercultural, political, whatnot. So we don't know enough to say clearly what caused the decline. It was probably a multiplicity of factors. And Sudeshna, if you want to address Saraswati, it's all yours.
Yeah, okay. So I'll just finish, Omar. He's just been very reticent because his film actually tells you that it's the multiplicity of factors. There's this amazing picture he's put in there with the body with these steatite beads. But the Sindhu Saraswati, so we know that there was two river systems. So there was the Indus River system, and there was another river system. Now, whatever you want to call that, but that was a river system. Long back in the 1970s, there was actually studies and work done on paleochannels, and they traced that there was a head cutting of the rivers which had happened on the top. So, the Jamuna, the Indo-Gangetic system, the Sutlej was the head cutting point. And there is, within the paleochannels, there is good evidence to show that the river went on a different route, one aspect of it. And the others went into the Cholistan Desert, which is also Rafiq Mughal's work, where it showed that the river kind of got lost. Now, what we call that river, that is, I would be the first one to say that let's not kind of make a name for it because it's a lost river. But there were two river systems, and that is what we need to think of when we think about some sites. Because also the Indus civilization is quite a strange civilization. There are sites which are over a huge geographical spread. And when we think about Mohenjodaro as Omar's film, Dholavira, there is also chronological distinction. So Mohenjodaro probably declined when Dholavira was coming up. And it's not a very easy thing to say that people migrated or whatever, but there has been a huge amount of research. And I think it would just be good that we follow John Marshall's terminology for this. And I say it as a nasty academic, and we keep it to either the Indus civilization, because that is the terminology Marshall gave it. Indians call it Harappan civilization because, of course, they wouldn't like to have they would like to call it the Sindhu Saraswati Sabhyata. But let's not go there. This is a phenomenon. It's an incredibly unique Bronze Age phenomenon, and we need to see it and we need to study it with the Bronze Ages in the world. So with things which were in, say, Oman, Ras Al Junayd, going up to what we call the Horns of Egypt, Mesopotamia, Anatolia, Crete, etc. And this is the Bronze Age we need to talk about, which did not have geographical borders, or it did not have Bharat names or Pakistani names. Right. So I'll leave it at that.
That's a really good point. And Sudeshna, there's a question in the chat from Aditya who's asking if the decline of the Harappa and Indus Valley civilizations also have anything to do with the so-called Bronze Age collapse.
So the Bronze Age collapse in itself, in archaeological scholarship, that's been also thought about. You see, it's all about, in history, you think in terms of a rise and fall of civilization. And if I kind of take up that historiography, it's Gibbons. The point is, nothing kind of rises suddenly or falls suddenly. And as Omar's film tells us, there is jukar, there is something which is continued from that Bronze Age, and especially the villages. I mean, you see, there are certain artifacts which went out of use. The dancing girl, if I have to use it, or the priest king, if I have to use it, are not there in the Chalcolithic sites of the Deccan or the Chalcolithic sites in Cholistan after that. But there are other things which have continued. So the collapse is a very strange word to use. The Bronze Age collapse was actually done in the late 19th century with, that's when Crete came up. I mean, that's a whole history of it. We wouldn't call it a collapse, but it was definitely a Bronze Age, and it's a part of the Chalcolithic world, and that continued, some aspects continued later on. But as our film on Mohenjo-daro also tells us, that the writing didn't, artifacts didn't, the cities didn't, or at least these kind of bricks, which were burnt bricks, they didn't. So we have to think about why not? And in other places of Bronze Ages, there are different kinds. So Mesopotamia had a different kind of a history of decline. Anatolia has a different history of decline, but there are certain things which has continued. In fact, the trade in the wood, actually, some of that continued later on. So,
thank you, Sudeshna. Thank you, Ramesh ji, for your question. And if anybody has any other questions or comments, if any of you want to check the chat, see if anybody, or we can end here because it's a little bit, it's 12:20 already on the East Coast, and we should sort of end like maybe about now. Chandra Kumar
Hello,
Balai.
thank you. I'm a doctor in
Sorry,
South
where
India.
are you? Sorry, can't
I'm a
see.
doctor from South India, but I trained in Delhi.
Looking,
can
so
you
you're
hear
looking,
me?
just, yes, we can hear you,
here.
but I'm just looking. Do you have your video on, Chandraji?
Yes, yes, I'm here. The first one in the.
Oh, okay, there you are.
Can
Okay,
you see
no,
me?
but it shows differently for everybody else. So I'm just looking for you to spotlight you. Right. Go ahead.
I'm not
Go
a
ahead.
historian, but my sister was a professor of history at the Miranda House, social history in Delhi. So that's the basis for my interest on Mohenjodaro and Harappa. I just have two quick questions. I know we're on time. The first one is, could earthquakes have affected the migration of people in that region? Because none of you touched about that, and could have led to a decline and people moving to the Harappan area, Dholavira, and other places, because earthquakes are quite rampant in Quetta and the Sindh region. And the other is about the genetics. A lot has been written about the genetics of the people of the Indus Valley. Thank you.
I quickly can just respond. Earthquakes, maybe, yes, but it's probably more the Indus River and the river systems having changes that they do naturally, and an earthquake may have affected that, so we can't be sure around the earthquake. Genetics, I mean, we're beginning to do research. I think a lot more research needs to be done. Some of the specimens have been very small specimens, but it is clear that the genetics shows so far that people are incredibly mixed in the subcontinent, and there have been genetic influences and inputs for millennia that have affected the people there. And we're learning, there's a lot more to learn about it, but it's definitely a very mixed bag.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Balai, for your question. That's a really interesting one. So let's end this here, if that's okay. If anybody doesn't have any other burning, pressing questions, I'd like to thank all the volunteers who made this event possible, especially Supper News associate editor Pragya Srivastav, who has landed in Colombo just yesterday and is jet lagged, but went above and beyond Call of Duty to help put this event together. And of course, Sara Arshad, who's been dedicatedly sharing links, and Kavita Srivastav, who I saw joined a little while ago. And she's always been a great encouragement. And there are many other people here who I'm not acknowledging everybody, but yeah, I think that we can remove the spotlights and we can stop the recording. Pragya, kya khayal hai? Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're removing the spotlight.